Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It's Way T Lightheart in the Awesome Health Show by Bioptimizers. And boy, am I pumped today because we have a special guest, Nick Pineault, who is going to teach us about these things called EMFs. He's recently written a book, and we're going to talk about his book. We're going to talk a little bit about his background. Nick and I go back a while now. We've talked about a lot of things on the health things. He travels the world like myself, searching for new ways and to solve the challenges of the modern world. So it's a combination of not avoiding the modern world, but actually living in the modern world. But today we're going to talk about something that's really, really important. It's called EMFs. And EMFs are these silent, odorless electromagnetic radiation waves that are being emitted by all this electric technology that we use every day, and there's some negative effects that can damage your health or affect your health, and there's a range of people that are affected to a range of levels. But today we've brought in Nick to talk about with his expertise on this very, very important topic. So without any further ado, Nick, how you doing, man?
Hey, Wadey, really glad to be here. It's great to talk.
Can you share with people, because not everybody's familiar with you and your work and how you got involved in this. How did you get started in this whole holistic health world, and what led you to EMFs?
Sure. So it's been almost 5 years writing my daily newsletter, Nick and Jen's Health to Life. So it basically relates my discoveries and stuff that I'm trying with Genevieve, which is my wife and business partner. So we're trying things out really from just a consumer perspective, not a big level expert or PhD perspective. So kind of self-experimentation and learning my own things. And I've been so interested in health for more than 10 years now. So I became a health journalist just through my writings, really, and then eventually published ebooks about nutrition and how broken our food system is, how the food toxins get into foods, and is organic better, and all these questions that really were on my mind. I'm just obsessed about health personally. So I was always thinking about these things. So I kind of researched them for myself and then reported back on the internet to a lot of people that seemed to be interested. So we gathered thousands of people from all around the world. And last year, I don't know exactly how it happened. All of a sudden, I became very obsessed with my cell phone. And I had heard here and there reports of people can get a brain cancer, but then you get another expert that says, oh no, it's a non-issue, it doesn't exist. So I'm like, wait a minute, it seems to be like credible people, PhD levels that say EMF, so the signals from your cell phone, so essentially cell phone radiation, is a huge issue and can totally destroy your health. And then the other side was like, no, there's no way it can even impact your cells. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's a problem there. And when I find these two sides that are that attack each other, oftentimes the truth stands somewhere in the middle, in the shades of gray, right? And what I found is essentially that EMFs are a real thing, and that certain countries all around the world, except US and Canada, that are not taking a lot of action, these countries are actively reducing levels of EMFs and doing something about it because the science isn't clear. So instead of saying, well, the science isn't clear, let's do nothing and increase levels like we're doing in North America, they're kind of saying, okay, well, it isn't clear, but there might be a chance that they're harmful to our health. So in the meantime, let's try to start reducing the signals. And they're kind of trying that, kind of doing, it's a very slow process. But the truth is that these things are not that tested. And this is really what got my blood boiling. I'm like, well, supplements need safety testing, heavy metal testing, and the FDA will kind of shut you down if you don't do things the right way. Pharmaceutical drugs usually require pre-market testing, but then cell phones, the way they're tested is ridiculous. And I'll stop talking so you can chime in, but I can talk about how it's tested because this is when I heard about that I got so mad because it's just ridiculous.
You bring up a good point here. First, we'll backtrack because I want to get to the testing in a second.
Sure.
For the person who's just joining us right now, how would you define what an EMF is?
Sure. Yeah. Basics first, right? I always get ahead of myself. EMF is electromagnetic fields. So these fields, like your cell phone, when it has the internet and you talk with someone, there's a field that is created. There's a signal that goes from your cell phone to a cell phone tower that connects your call and that gives you the internet. So this field, for example, is a type of EMF called microwave radiation that's emitted by your cell phone. Okay, so this is a transmitter, it transmits signals, and an emitter. So, and receiver, So it's a two-way antenna, basically, that you have in your hand. And it is amazing, honestly. Like 10 years ago, I wouldn't imagine that the iPhone would be possible and all these things. But these EMFs basically do have an impact on you, even though, and that's the hard thing for people to kind of grasp, you don't see them, you don't necessarily feel them, most people can't, you don't hear them, but they're there somewhere, they're invisible. So it kind of sounds like ghost hunting. So this is why a lot of people think it's a non-issue. It just sounds a little bit conspiracy theorist, UFO kind of thing, but it's really not. So the fields that are created by electronics, and I can go into different sources real quick. So there's your cell phone, sure, but if you have a tablet connected to Wi-Fi, that's another source of EMFs. A Bluetooth ear set or Bluetooth wearable, a bracelet, something, anything that is Bluetooth is also a source of EMF. Smart utility meters or even a smart toaster these days could connect to your cell phone. So maybe you can start your toast in the morning. There's a signal there. So the EMF environment we're looking at is everything that is contributing to kind of having this electrosmog that they call it in the air. It's as if we're increasing air pollution. Now we're increasing EMF pollution in cities because the levels are doubling every 5 years now or something like that.
Yeah, you bring up a couple points. And, if you look back in history, when they started talking about bacteria and the effects of
yes.
infection. They were having all these infections with births, for example, and they realized that doctors figured out, you could actually just wash your hands with an antibiotic, disinfectant, and all of a sudden you didn't have as many infections and people dying from births. It sounds ridiculously obvious today. But back then, this was groundbreaking technology. You couldn't see bacteria. The microscope came along. But now we do have technology that can measure electromagnetic radiation. And what's interesting is if you go to physics, and I always look at, if you talk about the Awesome program that I advocate to our students, we are electromagnetic beings, and our nervous system is an electrical nervous system, and every electrical wire creates a magnetic field, and every magnetic field creates an electrical charge. They're interrelated. And so now we have these very potent, powerful electronic devices, as you're talking about, are causing these. So my next question is this, and we'll get to testing, is what are what are some of the health effects that happens? Like think people are experiencing this and they don't realize it's their technology. How do you tell that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of symptoms. So that's the hard part, is just that overall fatigue is one of them. People report headaches. So some of them are acute and some of them are long-term, right? Just bathing yourself in the bad air in the city could lead to, you feeling toxic and fatigued over months, right? Same thing for electrosmog. If you live downtown LA, you might feel just, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I just feel so old. And then you get back in the countryside for a couple of days and you're like, oh my God. So it's part of it. It's better air, better sunshine, and of course, less EMFs. But as far as acute symptoms go, a lot of people report headaches. Like they talk on cell phone, they report tingling in their fingers, and all these things are real. And I personally feel a little bit tingly. And when you actually, it can play tricks with your mind too, but it's not to become completely paranoiac about it. But these symptoms are real. And another major symptom that most people I talk to that have never heard about EMFs report is poor sleep. For example, people that use their smartphone right next to their head as an alarm clock, one foot from their head maximum, or even below their pillow. I see that 75% of teenagers in the US, according to a survey, put their cell phone that's still open, still emitting EMFs 24/7 right under the pillow. And then you wonder why it's about 50% of them that have severe insomnia now, 1 out of 2. So it's like, well, I don't know. It's not the sole cause, but it's part of of the equation here. So if you put your cell phone, if you do this test right now after this interview tonight, you put your phone on airplane mode and you make sure that all the little icons, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and whatnot, they're all off. Or even better, put it in another room to make sure. Chances are you'll report sleeping better. At least half people that I tell that to report feeling better and sleeping better and more deeply, like being able to recall their dream. And this is if you recall your dream, that's a sign you're getting deep sleep, this stage 4 REM sleep, and then it leads to more healing. So then after that, we can kind of backtrack and say, well, wait a minute, if this affects our sleep even 10%, of course this affects disease. So this is just one of the many ways that EMFs could affect you on a daily basis. And then if it affects your sleep, well, it can impact my mood as well and my energy, right? You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, I need a coffee. Is that just EMFs? No, but it's just it's like trying to sleep while you have this cell phone poking you invisibly in the head all night. It's not ideal. Like, you want to know these things. But the thing is, it's nowhere on your cell phone. When you purchase an iPhone, it doesn't say, do not put below, like under your pillow, right?
Right.
So you cannot expect people to know that. So that's kind of where it becomes very tricky, because you're like, okay, do cell phone manufacturers know these things? Are you trying to hide things from us? And the truth is, the debate is super complicated. So in the meantime, while these guys are all busy fighting in politics, I publish a book that's on Amazon right now, and that tells you, okay, politics aside and everything, here's what you need to do right now to protect yourself while these guys figuring out. And that can take years or decades, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to be preventative. Of course, I remember I've been in a lot of conversations about EMFs, and I've been to some extreme holistic health places where literally people are wearing pyramids on their head. I know people who, take very extreme protections around EMFs. How your book, the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs, and I love that title because I literally have seen people putting tinfoil on their head in regards to things. A lot of crazy things. You hang around this industry long enough, you'll see some amazing things. But what are some things that some basic things you talked about, putting to airplane mode and stuff like that. But what I'm talking on my telephone every day, and let's just say there is some negative side effects. How do I talk on the phone without, putting myself at risk?
Sure. The good news is that when you create distance between the source of EMF, so a cell phone in your head, for example, just 1 foot will reduce EMFs not by 50%, it will be 80%. And if you put it even further, 2 feet, it's like 95% reduction. So it drops off exponentially. Even a millimeter can make a difference. In the drop off. So basically, the more distance you can create, and then if you want to look like a crazy person, you could talk like that very loud, but it's not really ideal, is it? So speakerphone. If you don't want to annoy your neighbors, have these guys wired headset, because a lot of people ask me, Nick, is Bluetooth better? Well, not really, because Bluetooth is another source of EMF. So it's like replacing, white bread with white bread that's enriched. It's like a processed food for another one, So it's like, yes, it's like 10% better. I don't know. Some Bluetooth headsets have been shown actually to emit more EMFs than certain cell phones. So it's kind of tricky. So I recommend going wired and then holding the phone 1 foot from your body or something like that, or putting it on your desk, or having a landline. If you're at work all day, it still exists. You can make it so that when your phone is on airplane mode, it automatically redirects the call to your landline, and then guess what? It still works. Like, these things still exist. So going wired for your calls also is another option.
Very interesting. Yeah, I know. It seems kind of ironic to say the landline, right? It's a disappearing commodity, but yeah, they too still exist.
It is rare.
You talk a little bit, I know, about in the book about laptops, and you mentioned it briefly. And there's some evidence people wear it, literally using it as a laptop can affect your hormones and things like that. What are some ways that people can help out with EMF radiation from their laptop?
Sure. Well, again, distance is your friend. So if you put it right on your lap as a man, for example, one study showed, it was a very small sample size, but still 4 hours of laptop use led to 25% reduced motility in sperm. So that's a huge marker of fertility. It's just 4 hours. And some people are like entrepreneurs that I see more like 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Because they're grinding away and writing stuff on the internet. Well, it's definitely not good. So putting it on a desk in front of you can make a world of a difference. You will remove 95% of the problem. And then there are certain products that have been invented so you can kind of shield the EMFs from your laptop. So you put the laptop on top of a platform and you could, they work, but yeah, it depends on how you use them and whatnot. So one of them is Belly Blanket, for example, has been created for pregnant women by a company called Belly Armor. You can find that on Amazon. Another one is called Defender Shield, and they have something called a Defender Pad. So it's been created by Daniel DeBon, an EMF engineer. These products work, but again, it doesn't necessarily address the radiation that's emitted towards your gut. So it's kind of tricky. Like I haven't measured all the possible angles. So like my best advice is just, if you're using a laptop all the time, like I do, just have it more like a desktop computer. So a little bit further away. And what I personally use, I use a kind of laptop stand and an external keyboard. So on top of that, I'm not hunched like that. I keep my good posture. So it's kind of double whammy. And then I have a standing desk. So you just organize an environment that's healthier for your body anyway. So when you create distance, it's even better. And then when it comes to laptop use, well, another possibility is to have an actual wire going in your computer. It's called an Ethernet cable. And just a couple of years back, it was the only way to connect to the internet before Wi-Fi. That's just 10, 12 years ago. So having an Ethernet cable, either you could have an electrician put Ethernet cables from your Wi-Fi to every room in your house and then plug yourself in and use one of these Apple dongles if you have a MacBook, and you can figure it out. It's fairly easy. All computers can still be used wired. So that's another option. If you're working all day, every day on the laptop, you can simply go wired. And a lot of people, I tell this trick to, at first there's a wire in the way and whatnot. But eventually you forget about it. It's just your habit. And then they report, wait a minute, I feel like 10, 20% higher performance. I haven't changed anything. And this is the kind of help that you would have in a low EMF environment that's natural. Because, for example, the microwave radiation, so that's the type of EMF emitted by cell phones in the air just around me in Montreal, is around a quadrillion times higher than in nature. So it's not twice as much. This signal, a microwave signal, does not exist in nature. There are all sorts of radiation like UV, infrared light, sunlight. These things can actually burn your skin. We know that they can have good effects and bad effects. Well, microwave radiation, we don't need it, and it's not natural. So these are all artificial things that's thrown at our biology. And then it's kind of confusing to every system in your body that's like, wait a minute, what's happening here? What's this signal? And as you mentioned, because our nervous system, our brain, our heart, all the organs work on an electromagnetic way on top of chemically, where bioelectric, it can affect any system in your body. So where do you put that cell phone? That's another thing that's very important to consider. You're just walking around in the streets. You're like, okay, am I irradiating my hand? Or do I want it to be my brain? Or do I want it to be my shirt pocket? And then some people get arrhythmias. Or is it my sperm count? Or my advice is just airplane mode while you're moving, and then you open it back up. But it's kind of like, it's kind of a hot potato you have to deal with these days.
What's the truth about these blockers for cell phone cases and stuff? Because it seems that most people, the cell phone has pretty much become we're pretty much Borg now with most people. I think the average person checks their phone 150 times per day. Yeah. And we're pretty much married to these things as a society. How do you... I've seen cases about it. Do they work, or what about these harmonizing the devices? Like, what's the deal?
Okay, two-pronged question here. The first one about cases, yes, some of them work. I haven't researched all of them. Defender Shield, the company I told you about, I trust them. They do engineer level products. And basically how it works is that they have an opening on the side of the phone that still picks up the signal, but that will not emit towards your body, more like towards the exterior. And I believe it reduces dramatically your exposure. Does it make talking on a cell phone safe? Well, that's debatable. That's my opinion. I wouldn't use a cell phone next to my head. I would have that in my pocket if I carry it around all day. I would probably be able to keep it open if my wife wants to call, if my future kids want to call me. I understand that some people have responsibilities and like you have a job and your boss is like, no, you close your cell phone, you're fired. Okay, well, they won't follow my advice, like first their job and then Nick's advice, you know? So it can be a good measure to take, just having this anti-radiation case and really save your fertility, especially as a man. That's very important. And as a woman, well, we don't have a lot of research, but you get your, like all your eggs, you have them once when you're born and you keep the same supply. So if it's damaged, your fertility could be impaired as well. There are very few studies about that, but that's a concern that a lot of PhD researchers I follow talk about. When it comes to EMF harmonizing, that's another question that's so huge because so basically what these devices claim, there are stickers, there are pendants, there are all sorts of chips and things that pyramids on there, and they talk about the Fibonacci numbers, and they use all sorts of sometimes science, sometimes pseudoscience. And honestly, I haven't researched them all, so I'm not discrediting the whole thing. My only advice is to do not use them as your sole means of defense against EMFs, because unless you have a way to have a lab and test your before and after and be 100% sure that you've ruled out all the biological effects that could happen, and this device, when it's on you, it completely shields you, well, that's impossible to figure out. So unless we have this data, I would say, well, first, remove the sources, create distance and airplane mode. Second, if you want to use EMF harmonizing device and you put them there, you put the chip on your phone and you realize, you know what, I think I feel better. Well, okay, but I wouldn't invest personally. Some of them cost like up to $1,000 I've seen. I would not personally invest in those. Most of what I share in the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs is free stuff. It's like, use a wired headset and then you're like 95% of the way there, you know? So there are a lot of more subtle things that I would do before investing in EMF harmonization, because I haven't found a reliable way to test these things.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of Masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on Masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at Masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at Masszymes.com. A couple of things that you talk about in the book is you 2 things I thought was pretty fascinating. One was the one-click fix to reduce your EMF radiation emissions by like 84%.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Okay, so if you go on the settings of your Android or iPhone under cellular settings, it can have different names. You'll have to kind of dig around a little bit, but usually in your either your carrier settings or cellular settings, you can go in there and you can see something called Enable 4G or LTE. So 4G stands for 4 generation and LTE long-term evolution. And these two things are the brand new, faster, bolder, bigger, better networks that have come online, I think in 2012, if I recall correctly. So more speed equals more EMFs, right? So that's one thing to understand. So if you disable this option, 4G and LTE, your cell phone will be forced to connect to the older, but still extremely fast, to be honest, fast enough, 3G networks. So you see the little icon in top left or top right is going to say 3G instead of 4G or LTE. And then your cell phone, mine, in my case, I have an iPhone 6, it emits 84% less EMFs when it's connected to 3G versus 4G LTE. Now, if I need the speed, I can go back in there and say, 4G, you know what? I have to take a sky call. It happened once. I was in the city. Oh no, it's choppy on 3G somehow. The antenna is too far. I go in there, click, 4G LTE, super speed, super EMFs. I was getting EMF nonstop for 1 hour, but the connectivity was good. So it's more like go a little bit slower, just fast enough, and you'll get exposed to less. So that's really an easy fix to do.
It's kind of like driving a car. Just go fast enough that body can handle. You mentioned something here that's pretty interesting about the GPS. I remember about a year ago, I was in Bali, Indonesia, and I got lost driving through the jungle late at night, coming from an event. And I used my GPS to come home, which was really kind of cool. I mean, that was really, but you said that there's a way that you can actually keep your GPS on while you're in airplane mode. How does that work?
So, and I couldn't figure it out for months. And honestly, after, or just before publishing the book, I wasn't sure how it all works. So I called up one guy that's a top EMF engineer in the world, Asdar Phillips. And Asdar was like, well, Nick, since 2001 and the September 11 events, the Homeland Security had Apple add a GPS chip, a separate GPS chip on all iPhones. And I think the same thing is feasible with Android as well. So basically you have cellular signal, that's one thing, when you have 3G, 4G, LTE, and you have GPS. So that's a different thing. So that's why when you're in airplane mode, it doesn't emit, the GPS chip emits barely anything detectable, but 4G, 3G, LTE, it's the strong signal that you don't want. So it's actually possible to be on airplane mode and to still have the satellite, the GPS, follow your position. So what I do, for example, you can put yourself on 3G and then input your destination. I want to go to Wade's house. Okay, here's the route, click, start. And then I put airplane mode and it's going to track just fine. The only thing that's not going to show up is, for example, the traffic updates and the stuff that's real time, but you can still navigate around. Even better than that now, and something I forgot to share in the book, is that you can download offline these maps on Google Map. So if you go on the Google Map app, you go and type Miami, okay, the entire city of Miami. And then you'll have an option, if you scroll down a little bit below, that says download offline. And you can download the entire map of Miami. So in that case, if you're walking around, let's say you're discovering downtown and you don't know where you're going, and you don't have a data plan or you don't want to get exposed, you can actually do searches now offline in Miami or any particular area on the planet, except if you're really, really remote, like Wade is doing sometimes, I'm sure.
Now, you're talking about another thing that a lot of people are using in EMFs, and they talk about this, and I'd like to get your input on it, is the whole idea of grounding and making sure your computer's grounded and all that sort of stuff. What's your take on grounding? Is it real? And how do you ground your computer if that's possible?
Yes. Well, it's very important to have a grounded computer. So a grounded computer has 3 prongs, right? Like this middle prong is the ground, and then you have the 2 other ones that are the electricity.
You're talking about the plug. You're talking about
the plug. Yes, exactly. Yes. So you can have that 3 prongs, or you can remove the leech on an Apple and have the little block I could show it to you, but that would disconnect my computer, I think.
Sure.
But it's 2 prongs. So in that case, it's ungrounded. So what happens when it's not grounded, ungrounded, is that your hands on the keyboard, you get low-level electric shocks a little bit all day, every day. And it's not going to kill you. You can't even feel the electric shocks unless you work from Thailand like I did in a cafe, and I could feel like almost sparks. And I was like, their electricity is not right. But that's another question. Maybe they had problems. almost made my computer explode, I think. But basically it's a kind of EMF. It's called an electric field. So it's basically just getting a little bit of electricity in your nervous system, and you'll feel adrenaline spikes throughout the day. And what will happen is that at the end of a work day working on an ungrounded computer, you'll feel more exhausted. A lot of people are like, I don't know what's happening, my energy. Well, it's just something very subtle that's happening, is that's draining, zapping away your energy. So just opt for the 3-prong thing. It's easy, and I recommend that to everyone. And if you have a laptop right now that's only 2 prongs, you don't have a way to do it, you can work off battery and for a couple hours, and then a computer is discharged. Just charge it and then work only on battery. That's another option, because you will not get shocked. As far as grounding goes, well, the idea of grounding, or some people call it earthing, is to walk barefoot on the earth. And they've realized that it does 2 things. It kind of attunes your body to the earth's natural magnetic field. It's called a Schumann resonance. And it also kind of dumps extra electrons from your body. So it kind of equalizes the amount of electricity that your body has. So it's kind of a natural mechanism that Mother Nature put in us to pretty much like sunlight in the morning will give you information about what time of the day it is. The grounding information also gives you information to your circadian rhythm. So when you do grounding, the first thing that I recommend, because it's a great way to make you less susceptible to EMF damage, in fact, because people that are very sensitive to EMFs report, I go ground on the grass, I walk in the forest, I go by the sea, I swim in the sea, in a lake, in a natural environment, and I feel way better. So it seems that it's a way to counteract the effects of a high EMF environment. And then, so in nature, outside for free is what I recommend. And then some people have, for example, these grounding sheets, grounding pads in the bedroom. And I have a kind of caveat with those, is that you don't want to use grounding sheets and grounding mat and grounding anything in a high EMF environment, because this thing is a huge silver mat that will attract EMFs from your environment. So if you have a cell phone around, then you have the Bluetooth thermostat and you have electricity in the wires and everything, and you put on top of that, I'm gonna just sleep grounded. It's, yes, you'll be grounded, but you'll also be part of the electrical system. So it can do the same thing as your computer, as I told you, the low-level electric shock. So some people report feeling better. However, 50% of them report feeling horrible. So it's kind of a test for yourself. So what I recommend in the book is, first, you turn off the circuit breaker at night. You remove the electricity. Think about being in the middle of the freaking forest. So no electricity, no devices, everything is unplugged and it's completely pure, no EMFs, as much as you can control. And then you use the grounding sheet, and then you might feel the benefits. And if you feel the benefits, by all means, continue doing it.
Wow, that's a lot of really good advice, and I know you have a lot more inside the book. So what other things would you like to mention about the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs that I think is why people should read this book? What you feel as we haven't covered?
The book contains everything, basically, every aspect of the question that once you start researching EMFs and you're like, oh, cell phones, and you realize, oh, wait a minute, children are at risk, what to do for children, what to do for your bedroom, what to do for your kitchen, and all these things in very, very simple words. Because I sat down, as I mentioned, Jen is my business partner and my wife, and we sat down together for days, basically, trying to figure out, okay, I had this on my mind, EMFs. And Jen was like, you know what, Nick, I don't think people are going to ever read your book because it's too out there. So I'm like, okay, before I write it, I want to have a perspective that's like, okay, am I losing you right now? So am I talking in very scientific language? Am I talking in anecdotes and like politics and whatnot? And we just removed all the fluff. So all we're left with is just very, very simple read where you can understand the problem, you can know what to do about it, and you can tell your friends about it, and actually in a way that they can understand, because it's so overwhelming. And it's also, if you want the nitty gritty, there are also advanced parts where, for example, I talk about cell phone towers. What should you do if there's a cell phone tower outside your bedroom in large cities? Or the smart utility meters, called smart meters, that they're installing everywhere. Is it a problem? And all these kind of topics that people like to talk about. But I also tell you, you know what? Forget about these things. Here's your first priority. It's your cell phone. This is the one thing you have control over. And then here's your second priority. So it's kind of taking you by the hand and helping you figure out how to reduce your EMS without going back to the Stone Age and hiding in the woods. You don't have to do that. So really the guide is just an actionable read. And some people have told me they've actually had fun, and this is huge, reading about EMFs. So that's my promise for you.
That's great. So the book is called The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs with Nick Pineault. We've got in the show notes, so you can get a copy of it at www.bioptimizers.com/EMF. It's right here in the show notes. Nick, this has been very enlightening. I really appreciate you sharing about your research. I know you do a lot of research, and the fact that you're converting these kind of complex, airy-fairy and this highly controversial topic into simple, applicable language that anybody can do. I think that you're offering a real value, and it's been a delight to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Wade. I really appreciate that.
You bet. So for those of you, again, that's the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs. You can get it here in the show notes, bioptimizers.com/EMF. That's Nick Pineault, our guest today on the Awesome Health Show. I want to thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next show. And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based. And you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.